Hello everyone! It's been a little while, but we are here today with another video. We're going to do a quick one before diving into some big guys. We're going to do the Ticket to Ride Ring Final event today. So if you've seen my other Ticket to Ride video where I play in the semifinals, not of the ring event, but of the whole event, then you'll know that my experience with Ticket to Ride is somewhat limited, and I'm actually choosing to do this game sort of in the context of I've just learned how to get decent at Ticket to Ride pretty recently. So it'll be fun to watch these experts, these gentlemen play out here and see if there's anything we can kind of pick up from what's going on in their experiences along the way. We'll, of course, comment along. This is going to be a nice, quick, short video. Before we dive into it, though, I do want to say, actually, very exciting opportunity. If you are interested in coming to the World Series of Board Gaming this year, I actually have access to, or you have access to a special code that you can use, Phoenix, capital PHOENICKS, the name of this channel. You can use when you're logging up if you sign up for the whole week or for the quadruple events. If you do that on their website and you use that code Phoenix, then you will have $40 off. So if you are interested in getting in on the mix of things, make sure you use that and save yourself a couple dollars. Without any further ado, let's get started with this game here. We've got William, David, Tony, and Ole. Ole, sorry, I probably spelled your name wrong. I don't really know how it's spelled, but hopefully I got it right or got close enough. And let's go ahead and get started with this game. So we have, as usual, I'm coloring. I'm over my fellow commentators who did this on the World Series of Board Gaming YouTube channel themselves. So if you want to listen to their playthrough of the game and they're talking about it, you're of course welcome to do so. I encourage you to do so. But we're going to focus really here on the strategic commentary as much as possible. The first strategy we of course need to talk about here is the fact that David has his trains in askance piles of 5, where everyone else has them kind of in their little 5 rows or clusters or columns, and David here is just going with an absolutely wild pile strategy, which is definitely a choice. We also you might have caught a glimpse of it, but Tony is the only one whose tickets like really saw, because he was kind of holding it in such a way that we could tell on the camera. He's got 3 tickets that are kind of shorter tickets, north-south tickets on the western central side of the United States. Not kind of the ideal place I think you want to be with your starting tickets in this game. As I discussed in my other video, and as you might have seen, the general like east to west tends to be nicer because you want to be making those big, longer 6 routes as much as possible. And having to go north to south, you tend to get a little bit clunkier in the routes along the way there. All right, we're off to the races. William grabbed some cards, David grabbed some cards, and so did Tony. I want to point out that David grabbed a white card right off the top. And so immediately if I see that, what I'm thinking is that he is going for that 6 white from Calgary to Winnipeg. That is one of the sweetest routes you can have in this game. It's a 6 route that does that east-west thing. The northern strategy on the United States board is quite powerful. We see Ole here is grabbing some yellows, so he also might be thinking about grabbing that 6 route that's on the west coast there between Seattle and Helena, maybe? No way, that's Helena. What is that? I think that particular city, the central city with like 6 things coming off of it in the west that's in the Rockies there, always throws me off. Or maybe he's doing like the El Paso, Oklahoma City thing. But that's what we're seeing from these players. David, again, scooping up some whites here. While most of the players are going to, I think, like we see William was grabbing a lot of cards off the top, and we see a very, very early refresh. That's because they had 3 wild trains clogging up the board there. And so those are then now in the trash, which means that when we go to a reshuffle, if we go to a reshuffle, all the players are going to know there's actually a decent chunk of rainbow cars in the discard pile right now, which is pretty interesting. Tony draws off the top. Again, if you haven't watched my previous video, let's talk about drawing in this game. So, like I said, I kind of have an inclination about what David might be doing, what Ole might be doing based on the fact that they drew white trains and yellow trains. I could be wrong, of course, like that there's always the possibility that folks are grabbing those trains for a different reason, or they're just trying to kind of like cluster up. Like if Olay already had a few yellows in his hand, grabbing another one gives him a lot more opportunities to kind of go on any of those gray routes throughout the board. He also grabs a white train there. So I'm now wondering if he's doing Calgary, Winnipeg as well. Those 6 route trains are just so much nicer. For 6 cards, you get 15 points. So 2.5 points per card, which is just so much more efficient than playing those 1 or 2 routes. And saves you action efficiency as well, because to place the 6 trains is 1 action. Whereas if I played, let's say, 3 double routes, I'd only score 6 points rather than the 15 points, because it's 2, 2, and 2. And you go the exact same amount of distance. We did see that we see now that David is grabbing pink cards. So if I'm correct about that Calgary Winnipeg thing, those pink cards could also run along the north there from Toronto to Duluth. Is that what it is? Which connects pretty nicely if he gets a 4 black to just kind of like make one nice long train straight across the top there. That's a pretty good place to be in. But the thing about drawing off the top, the reason that's beneficial is twofold. One is that you are going to generally want a ton of cards in your hand. You're going to play, 43 to 45 trains ideally throughout the course of this game. Like, you want to be playing as much of your trains, as many of your routes as possible. And so 43 are required of the 45 for someone to trigger the end game. So you're probably going to be playing just about 40 cards. So you're going to have a huge number of cards that you need to draw and play throughout the course of the game. And drawing a wild card takes 2 of your actions. But if you draw a wild card off the top, bonanza, like, congratulations, you have exactly what you need. We see that these players are definitely valuing taking the cards that are right for them. So we got like an orange and a yellow here. Again, like if I'm looking at the 6 trains, which is my like default assumption when you're taking cards of color, like these players are trying to like suit up what it is that they have and make sure that they're going to be able to play these long routes. And at this point, enough of them have drawn kind of colored cards from in play that it is mysterious, essentially, like what's going on. There's a little bit too much information now to say. So that whole like I know what players are doing thing starts to kind of go out the window as more and more players are taking trains of different colors. David makes a really interesting choice here by grabbing the wild card train. I suspect that if I'm correct about his Calgary Winnipeg thing, he might be taking that 6 card, and he's maybe very nervous that Olay, who's picked up a couple white cards, is heading to that route. You can see him actually like looking across the table at him right now. So I'm putting my money on David's about to drop a 6 train on his next turn. Oh, Tony's got 4 tickets. So I thought he had 3, but I think it looks like he's got 4 there that are going to be those. And if I'm seeing them correctly, they're mostly north-south routes in the west, so they all kind of match up with each other, which I think it gives him some opportunities there. Pile of blue cards out there. Williams picking that up. Blue routes to me say Miami, or that Miami route, or that Portland route, most likely. But I've already got suspicions about a couple people there running the West Coast. And it looks like I was wrong about David going for a 6 route up north. I thought when he grabbed the wild, he had like a very definitive plan. He needed to play something, but guess I'm not quite right about that one. I mean, wilds are always great, but 2 cards is better than 1 card, right? So as long as you're not drawing duds, if you're drawing 2 off the top, you're giving yourself cards that you can have throughout the course of the game. So back to what I was saying before about having like 40 cards in your hand. If you're going to be drawing cards, then having them in clusters ends up being very beneficial. By drawing randomly early, you can then decide what you need to draw to make your hand work. That being said, of course, you should take trains if you know exactly what it is that you're trying to execute. And we see a 3 train route here kicking off Olay at the start of the game. 3 train routes are fine, 3 for 4 points. I mean, they're more efficient than a 1 or 2 path train. But the important thing here is that he actually is using those 3 trains to go from Phoenix to LA, which I think a couple routes end in Phoenix. A lot of routes, I think, end in LA. And this southwest part of the map is a very tight corner of the map. It's very easy to get blocked off. If you were actually a good Ticket to Ride player, then you should maybe use that route to block other players to prevent yourself from losing a really, really crucial game. Not that I'm talking about any important present company at all. The other thing that Ole's play tells me is he used red trains, which means I don't think he's interested in playing a red route anywhere. So that's fine. That tells me he's probably not going all the way down to the southeastern corner of the United States, because otherwise, like, keep those red trains so you can run that 6 path to Miami from New Orleans. That's pretty great. So I assume that Ole is going to be kind of doing more of like an up down West Coast thing, or kind of like diagonally across the middle here. He's clearly not going to do Dallas El Paso, because again, he just played those red trains. I would actually now say, because I remember Ole drawing white cards, he is planning on going from Phoenix to Denver with those white cards, right? A 5 train is really nice. We know that he's got that connection there. So him doing that kind of like diagonal across the United States is very reasonable. And like I said, a lot of paths end in Los Angeles, or in Ole's case, I guess, start in Los Angeles. You can see my East Coast mind, even though I spent so many years living in Oakland on the West Coast. I'm still very East Coast minded. All right, really interesting. William grabs the white card off the board, which like has been a pretty hotly contested card so far. I wonder if he's got a specific route in mind, or if he has just noticed that white cards are important to people. He then immediately snapped up the black card. So that was probably more important to him than the white card. And he spent a moment thinking about it. I kind of feel like William a couple times has been punished for drawing off the center there, right? The one time he drew off the center and then a wild card flipped off the top, which just always feels bad, because you know that if you had drawn off the top, you would have gotten that. And if William had drawn off the top last time, he would have gotten a black train, and then kind of his choice of train after that. So sometimes Lady Luck is gonna reward you for those kinds of plays, and then sometimes she's gonna say, you know what, just take the thing off the top and be content. William here, I thought, was going to maybe grab some blacks based on his last draw, but he's going to focus on expanding those blues, which you've seen him draw a couple of those before. So again, I think he's coming out of Miami or coming out of Portland, because he's grabbed at least 3 or 4 of them. So he's got a plan there. I think the thing that's nice actually about grabbing lots and lots of ones of the same color too is that you can also count, if you can get more than 6 in a specific color, you can generally use those to run gray routes, and you then prevent there's only 12 of each color in the deck, so you prevent other people from essentially contesting any of your long routes in that color, short of them using just a pile of wilds, which I think people are generally reluctant to do. Look at Tony drawing a green and then a green off the top. That's a good feeling, I imagine. He's got a boat of greens in there. Tony has quite the well manicured hand, right? Like what we see here is not, I think there's 8 different colors of trains, and he looks to be holding like, clusters of cards in 4 or 5 colors. So that's nice. That's generally where you want to be, unless of course there's a specific route of a specific color that he's hoping to get and he's not drawing those cards. But having, those bigger clusters lets you make those bigger runs, gives you essentially more points, more power, which is generally quite beneficial. I love that these players are playing at a really fast clip. They really know what they're doing, grabbing things. There we go, seeing that punishing again. Tony grabs the black, and then there's a wild off the top there. So that's just the way that it goes when you're making very distinct choices. But he's colorizing his hand in the way that he likes. I wonder with the blacks if he's planning on doing a Los Angeles El Paso thing, since we know that he's West Coast like. And then William sees that and says, you know what, I don't want to get in that, and I don't want to like contest it. I don't want to worry that that's where Tony is going with 6 blacks, so I'm going to open up the path here from LA to El Paso. 6 train right here is worth 15 points, like we said. So that's kind of the sweet place to be here. It's kind of funny at this point. You see like the players they're playing so quickly, so like frenetically that like they're pumping the table as they're moving the pieces. I find that really fascinating, actually. They're moving at a clip in this game that in a lot of other finals you don't see, which I really appreciate. I also I took a look at the end of this video. I didn't watch the whole video, but I was looking at the end. I like to have a sense kind of like maybe where it's going to go. And the players were deconstructing the game in a way that if you just lost a game that's like a relatively significant competitive game and like sitting at the table and like deconstructing what's going on there, that's a tough emotional thing to do. But they are actually like very chatty, very pleasant. One of the players that ends up losing the game then like quips that he doesn't have to go and learn the other games that he would play in the semifinal. So I think that the people, I get the impression that the players at this table really like Ticket to Ride, and a lot. I think a number of them came here to play this game, which is pretty cool, I think. Oh, are they deciding whether they can look at the discard pile? Or are they counting it? 5, 6. It's got to be a count. Or is it a shuffle? 12. Looks like we're at 18, 19 cards in there. So 19 cards in there because they're doing a reshuffle. 6 of them are black. 3 of them are wilds. And then a handful of other stuff. 3 of them are reds. And then a handful of other stuff that I didn't really pay a lot of attention to. So 19 cards. Did I miss another flush somewhere? 5 and 9, 14. I might have missed another flush in there. So maybe there's even more wilds, which to me, I don't know, I would be drawn off the top like crazy right now. Of course, getting stuck with drawing a bunch of blacks might not be the place that you want to be, depending on what your hand looks like. But even still, the odds of getting a wild right now are higher than they are probably at any other point in the game. So that's something I'd definitely be considering while drawing cards. And if I did indeed miss 2 flushes, the second flush, and there's 6 wilds in there, and there's 2 wilds in play, that means there's not a lot of players holding on to wilds right now, which makes sense. They haven't been drawing off the top as much as I normally would while I'm playing this game. They've really focused on getting those runs, essentially, right? The appropriate cards of the appropriate colors. Ooh! Is William dropping 5 whites there? That might be awful for Olay. Because like I said, I was really convinced that he was trying to play that route. And William doing that is nasty for him. I don't think it even matters how important that route is to him, because he can go Phoenix, Santa Fe, Denver for the same 5 cards. But the difference is that it's 1 play for, I believe it's 10 points for a 5 route versus 2 plays for 6 points for a 3 and a 2 route, right? The 4 and the 2 together. That is harsh. I mean, if I was right about that's where Olay is going, that's not a good spot for him to be in. And William, I don't know if he's planning on connecting his trains or if he's just taking big long routes here, but that's something he's got to pay attention to. And Tony, who we know is Northwest on the West Coast here, we've got 3 players competing for the Southwest right now. That is rough. I don't know what tickets it is that they took and kept, except for we have some sense of Tony's cards, but that's something that's going to make this very competitive quickly. And the person who wins out in that, of course, is David, because he doesn't have to fight over these spots like these players are doing. Olay is going to kind of end up connecting over to El Paso, which is sort of interesting. I wonder if he's going to take that yellow El Paso up to Oklahoma City. And then if he does indeed need to go to Denver, which I don't know if he does or doesn't, he might have to zig back using reds that he had played from LA to Phoenix. So I'll be really curious to see where Olay is headed and what his tickets look like at the end. But I have to imagine this is not a good situation for him. Him playing that also is very brutal for William, because William wanted to connect Phoenix and El Paso for his 6 and 5 train. So these players are just like right now, yellow and red are really ruining each other's lives. And that's tough when everyone is contesting the same things here. I think William, he's sitting back and thinking about it. So I think that was the spot he was going to go to. And that's the tricky thing about, he played that 5 white train route, and he was thinking maybe David was going to play it. So he didn't choose to play El Paso Phoenix first. But the thing is, everybody right now has 3 cards of a suit in hand because it's a gray route, the Phoenix El Paso route. So if William was nervous that David was headed that direction, then he maybe should have considered playing that first. But then, if Ole indeed does have the 5 whites and see that William is coming up that path, then he can play on it. So I don't know how important that specific connection was for William, but he did really leave himself open to getting blocked in that fashion. I think William's got a couple options at this point if he wants to reconnect. He can come up from Los Angeles and sort of connect around over into Salt Lake and then across to Denver. That's a kind of awkward, 2-3-3 spot that has multiple opportunities for players to block you in, but they're not terribly incentivized, I think, to get in his way at that point. Just kind of like let him do this sort of like cruddy route. And then also he sort of like spurs in a funny way if he's going to continue that route, or, if he starts in Phoenix, he can at least go down along the south. So that's an option, but not a great feeling. Another option here, of course, is he can go up from El Paso to Denver, which is what it looks like he's going to do. But the thing is, of course, then both of the sides, right, when he connects that, both of the sides of his routes, kind of like the tails point to each other for Phoenix and Los Angeles. So this is looking pretty awful for Williams' chances at longest road, not longest road, longest route, longest contiguous, whatever, plus 10 points at the end of the game for having the longest contiguous rail line. And Tony's like, you know what, guys, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. He grabs that 5 orange there. I'm not sure that we were concerned that other players were going to grab that specific route. I don't know what the next play is for Tony, whether he's grabbing the 3 pinks or the 6 blues. But if he has either of those routes, I would have considered playing those first. Just concerned that people will take those kind of singleton spots. That being said, given the number of white cards that we've seen go out in this game, like, we know that Tony doesn't have white cards, and so maybe he's really saying, this orange route is essentially to me the same as that 3 pink route, right? There's no other option. I'm only going to go this way. For him to draw 5 white cards is going to be a little bit tough. If we end up drawing through the deck here, there we go. There's a flush. We know that the discard right now is looking, heavy orange, heavy white. Those are the things you can expect to be drawing out of that reshuffle discard pile, and a couple wilds in there because we just had that flush. Yeah, I think the players have a very low amount of wilds in their hand right now, which is going to mean that they're a little bit more restricted by the cards that they're going to play, which means that they're more incentivized to draw cards from the tableau and make sure that they're getting their cards that they want. It is very interesting that William and David started going for blacks at the same time, given that some time had passed when that was the case. I think that David wants the blacks because I'm suspecting this Calgary-Winnipeg thing and then Winnipeg down to Duluth. And fortunately for David, he just doesn't need to fight the other players for these spots, which is a great place to be when you're playing Northern Rail lines in this game. Big, long routes. He's not fighting for people. He's the last person to play onto the board, and is not nervous. It doesn't seem nervous, right? That feels pretty good. He doesn't necessarily know what these other players' long-term game plans are, but yeah. I said something about Williams pathing earlier that I realized is just totally false. Going from El Paso up to Denver is crazy. Instead, he's going to connect El Paso to Santa Fe to Phoenix, and that way the tails of his train are actually going to be facing in different directions, one west and then one east. So he actually does have the opportunity to kind of, fix his sort of pathing here in a way that I think works out just fine for him. And here we are in the reshuffle. Looks like we got 12, 18, 24-ish cards in the deck. We know 3 are wilds. We know 6 are oranges. We know that 5 are whites. So that's 14 of the cards accounted for. I have 3 pinks, 2 of something else that wasn't played. So those are the kinds of cards we're looking at, right? The pinks, oranges, and whites when you're drawing off the top of the deck right now. That's important for people to keep in mind here. Ole is fine with that. Draw some cards off the top. He's just kind of looking to expand out his hand here. I haven't been counting how many rounds have gone by because I would have a sense of how many cards David had in his hand. Tony is making a pretty obvious telegraph here he is going to be playing a root on his turn. I don't think it really matters that much that he knows that, but man, it could not be more obvious that you're playing a root on your turn, my guy. That's really funny. All right, and David's getting on the board. I can't see what cards he played because unfortunately it's underneath my commentators here. He played out 6 cards, 6 orange cards. So that's going to connect Duluth to Helena or whatever that Rocky Mountain city is that I never seem to get right and obviously should look up because I get this wrong. I got this wrong in the last video too. I just can't read it against the gray text of the mountains. That's interesting. I wonder if the reason David opened that now is because so many oranges, 5 oranges, went into the discard pile and he's worried that players will pick it up. I think he does have some time though before he needs to get there. Tony here drops 6 greens to connect across the bottom here. I am not sure. This is just brutal. I don't know if Ole was planning on taking that 6 green thing, but God, like if he wants to connect his trains, he's going to have to kind of go like up and over, like through Oklahoma City and across Denver. Like, ugh, that seems just horrible. But maybe he needs to connect to El Paso for one of his tickets because we know that he's got those West Coast tickets that go kind of north-south. So he might have been forced into doing that and now can't connect his train. So he's going to end up drawing a horseshoe, which will maybe work for him. But this is just, they're there. Like, I'm sweating bullets for all 3 of these players. I know that David ends up winning this game. You might know that as well. So I'll go ahead and spoil it right now. But like you can see from the way that this is playing out at the beginning that just the fate of the cards, the tickets that they kept at the beginning of the game is hurting them. And I think this is one disadvantage of playing on the West Coast. Generally, the West Coast, I think, is better. They've got bigger, longer routes, which are worth more points. I've already discussed that. But you get into these fights, right? Like these fights where they're competing for territory in a very important and very real way. That's going to stop them from all of them from executing the plan that they want to. Ole does the 5 yellows, which I'd kind of expected more than the greens. So he plays it right after those greens. I think he has to guarantee that spot doesn't get taken from him. I don't know that Tony was like looking at taking that spot, but if he was, I think that was probably the time. And here we get David making another 6 train. So he's going to put himself into first place with just 2 train plays up to 30 points. And he did that with a bunch of reds, which no one seems to have valued very much this game because we saw Ole kind of throw away 3 for red. Those 3 reds have been sitting in play for quite a while now. And then that was 6 from David. So finally we see a red get cleansed. Another flush this game. Lots of flushes because the players are drawing from the tableau quite often. And unfortunately for Ole, we see that situation where you get punished for drawing a red card and then a wild comes off the top. I mean, it's going to happen. And at the midpoint of the game is where you want to be drawing random cards less because drawing singletons and suits that you don't have, you might end up not using those cards. It can be a lot more of a dud. I don't quite know how many cards the players have in their hands, like if they're at what I would call the halfway stage of the game, even though that doesn't look like the roots are at the halfway stage of the game. It can very much be the halfway stage of the game based on how many cards they have in their hand. Because again, you're just kind of counting how many cards. Like drawing 50 cards is crazy because you're only going to play at maximum 45 trains. So if you're drawing 50 cards, something has probably gone wrong for you along the way. Looks like William didn't like my idea about going from Phoenix to Santa Fe. And so he's going to have this awkward, 2 tails of his train are facing in the same direction. And both of those are almost dead-ended. So unless he's doing kind of like a wild loop up and around the West Coast, which is certainly possible, his pathing here is going to look a little bit awkward, kind of spurred out of the middle there. So I'm going to assume he's going up the West Coast for that reason, but it is tough to tell. We see that Tony picks up a pink here. I'm not sure if that's to go up to the mountain city that shall not be named, or if he was going from maybe Denver to Chicago. Is that Chicago? The one north of Kansas City. That could be another option there, right? If he's trying to make that horseshoe that we were talking about earlier. Whew, I'm running out of breath. They're going fast. Another white card draw from Olay. Maybe he's got like an East Coast, West Coast plan, and he's using those white cards to go like Little Rock, Nashville. Would be a reasonable guess. It's a kind of ugly route, right? Because he's got a couple 2s and 3s along the way there. If you're going east to west, going the north path is just so much nicer than going, or the southern path. Going through the middle, east to west, is just, it's painful. It's not, the routes just are not quite as long, quite as powerful as those big long routes. David here kind of doing his very distinctive style, laying out a bunch of stuff. I think that's whites, so I think we can expect to see Calgary, Winnipeg right now. He's just going for maximum point scoring up to 45. He's for sure in the lead. He hasn't connected his paths yet, but he's got some options for how to do that. Right, because he can connect maybe Calgary down to the mountain path, the mountain thing that shall not be named, or kind of zig across the West Coast even further if he's also holding 6 yellows. He can do it kind of just straight up connecting those 3 grays between, is it St. Sault Marie and then Duluth? Something like that. So he's got a few options. We've got 3 pinks here, which I think is going to head up to the mountain city that shall not be named. My guess is that for Tony, like we know he's got those west, north, south things, so that's probably a place that he needed to go. I wonder if he's going to take the greens back down and try to connect the horseshoe that way. I think that would make a bunch of sense, or the red kind of through the middle there, from the mountain path that shall not be named. Well, he's taking a second here. He is trying to figure out, I think, where he needs to go first. Much bigger discard pile this time. Big clusters of cards that got discarded were oranges, whites, and reds. Those were 6 of each of those. And then maybe some greens too. Orange, white, red, and green. Yeah. I don't know that we've seen like any blue cards getting played this game. That being said, there are 2 sitting in play, so it's clear that players are not highly valuing those blue cards right now. A lot of oranges too. A lot of oranges out of the game right now. By out of the game, I mean out of players' hands. I wonder how they established that Tony was going to be the deck shuffler. It's kind of a... He's one of the farthest from it, right? So I just think that's an interesting dynamic. I do love a pile shuffle, though. Supposedly one of the best shuffles you can do is the wash shuffle. Just kind of like throw the cards and like wash them around the board. That's apparently like one of the most significant ones in terms of actually randomizing the cards, because the pile shuffle has a problem of like, if you pile shuffle systemically, you actually don't end up shuffling the cards, or you shuffle them in a pattern, which is just as problematic. I wasn't paying enough attention to see whether I thought that particular shuffle was a problem or not, but I'm just rambling about stuff that I find interesting. I'm still going all the way back. I'm still so interested that David grabbed that wild that one turn. I guess he just really valued the flexibility of the card at the time. I mean, and you're always going to use your wilds before the end of the game, so they're never, ever, ever bad. Okay, so he heads all the way across the top here. I'm going to assume that by choosing to go to Vancouver, he has a Vancouver card. Otherwise, it's a little bit better to run the 4 down to Seattle or Portland. So I don't know the routes well enough. But if you did memorize them, going to a place like Vancouver to me is a pretty clear indicator, pretty clear communicator that I've got these, few cards that are in the deck that go to Vancouver. And I do know that one of them is like Vancouver, like straight across the north side of the country. It ends up being like 20 points or something like that. The card's points, by the way, is the number of trains that connect the shortest possible route from the 2 cities. So this is another reason why generally the longer routes are better, because the game does not evaluate tickets any better if you have to take short routes or long routes. It only cares the number of trains that are placed down to do that. Here's a couple blues. We knew that William was collecting his blues, and so he also, much like David, quite valuing these big long routes, which I've rambled about. Clearly, I love them, and that's making him very much on this sort of West Coast plan here. I'll be curious to see if William is planning on going up the West Coast, so he kind of builds like a shaped in sort of thing. My suspicion is no. I think that they're doing this. There aren't enough trains to compete for longest route, even though it's effective in the contiguous nature of things. You just won't have the train length that you need from other people. And then we see David dropping all the blacks to connect straight across the top, grabbing a fiver there, another 10 points. He, I think, is easily leading the pack right now. 4 blues right here to me is connected. Okay, we're going up to Winnipeg. So I think this must be one of the destination cities for Tony, which we just didn't quite see. But right, the fact that he's going up and over, and I think the plan is to drop down. I mean, again, the really awkward part for him is going from Houston up from there is just a bunch of 1 and 2 trains. It's any card you want, so he can just kind of use whatever riffraff he has in his hand to make that happen. But it is just a long, low-scoring slog to do that. Him not being able to get that Los Angeles to El Paso connection, either the way that Ole did it or the way that William did it, I think really hurt his overall game plan. Want some more reds, William? He sure does. He's collecting lots of the same color. Oh, but 3 reds also connects Salt Lake over to Denver. So that's my guess as to what he is attempting to accomplish here. I guess the sneeze is not going to come. Do we get another flush? How fun. Pink card there. I'm just going to assume that he's running that 6 train from there to there. He's just maximizing points by placing long routes. Doesn't matter much to him, I think, what those routes are going to look like. In terms of like where they're connecting to. He's got this big kind of across the top. I wonder if he's got 2 cards that go across the top. If so, that's, I mean, just like the dream. That would be pretty incredible. Tough to say whether that's actually like what he's got, or if he's just really, really prioritizing these sixers. It could also be that he's got some like kind of short, mid coast or east coast route that he'll just kind of connect on the latter end. It's not like other players are competing for routes over there. Williams going up and down, Tony's going up and down. The only person who might be headed to the East Coast here is Ole. And it will be interesting to see if Ole is zigzagging up here from El Paso to OKC over to Denver, or if he is planning on connecting from Oklahoma City to Kansas City and running the same way that William is. I hope for all of their sake that he is zigzagging from Oklahoma City to Denver, because otherwise it's just going to be messy. And then I assume that he's just not he might not have the red cards, but he also just might not be worried that other players are going there, because that route doesn't seem terribly essential for the kind of pathing that William is going for. But it is a little hard to tell what he's going to do, because he's got this kind of spurred train situation going on. Ooh, look at that. We have a wild. So Tony really, really valuing this 4 black. He needs to make sure he connects down. I think that makes sense. It's not the best route for David to have connecting, just in terms of it being like kind of right in the middle of his long road there, so long rail there. So I can see why, but it is nerve-wracking, right? Like if Tony can't be blocked there, or it's just a nightmare situation for him. So for him, it's worth it to throw the wild out there. not have to worry as much about David maybe grabbing that. David probably doesn't have many blacks in hand because he used 5 blacks to connect across the north side. So I think actually I haven't been paying close enough attention, and I don't know that Tony has either, but you might have a sense of who has even the potential of having enough black cards to do that route. It is possible that Olay actually could be going up that direction as well. So I like it. I understand why Tony has to make that play and make sure he gets out of Winnipeg, even though it costs him a while to do so. Looks like we're on Olay's turn, so he's trying to figure out what's going on. I don't know if that means that he's trying to evaluate what's more important, or if the spot that Tony just took was a really big deal for him. That is a possibility. I mean, if that's the case, there's absolutely no, he can't get to Winnipeg. It's completely locked out at this point in time. 2 whites. Okay, so he is going East Coast. Why that one? This is just really interesting play. I'm not sure what the thinking was about why that needed to be played at that point in time. He's maybe worried about what David is doing over there, doesn't have green cards, and really wants to make sure he gets specifically that New York-Philadelphia connection. David grabbing some yellows here. Can't help but wonder if he's running that 6er. He might also just be collecting colors of a similar type so he can play on the grays, because a handful of grays along the north there. It's also entirely possible that Tony's just not going to connect it back down to his El Paso Houston route. Like maybe he just happened to have a bunch of green cards and said, you know what, that's fine. I'm going to just score 15 points by playing this route and then be done with it. Now, of course, that I see this 5 green play, the 2 whites makes a lot more sense because he knows he's not going to have the 7 greens. So he plays the 2 whites there. That's the smaller route. He's not as concerned that people have a pile of greens in hand, probably because he's paying a little bit more attention than I have. And that allows him to connect that route there. Now we can see he almost certainly is going to zigzag Oklahoma to Denver. Well, I guess he doesn't have to. He can just spur it out from Oklahoma to Kansas City. But it is nice to play the longer routes. It's nice to make it so that your route is contiguous going like this rather than this with a spur out and a spur this way. Avoiding that is great. William grabs the 6 yellows there. I think he probably does that in response to the fact that David picked up some yellows, so I bet he's card counting those. Generally, when you're going for the big long routes, you I think pay more attention to what specific colors people have picked up. So he started getting nervous and said, you know what, all right, I'm gonna claim this route while I can. The other players could. This is a situation that's always funny, by the way. Portland Seattle can be an interesting connection. And it's a 1 train. That's, I think, one of the more competitive spots based on the routes that people in the game can have. So the players could kind of like collude to just ruin Williams' life and block that spot off. But of course, it's not very good to score 1 point and pass the turn if you don't actually need the spot yourself. David's clearly not concerned about it, so I suspect that he is not interested in connecting down that way. His routes probably don't say get to Portland or Seattle, because otherwise I think he'd need to grab it. Knowing roughly the contents of Tony's hand, I think this is a pretty clear indicator that he's got a card or a route that goes to Calgary. So there he goes, making sure that he makes that connection. He does it right now, I think, because he sees William connecting that 6 yellow train, and he's worried that he's going to go to the same spot. So might as well play this spur out now. While as the players' networks are expanding and saying, "Ooh, I don't know if Williams gonna end up, going to this spot or not." Oh, we're gonna get another flush this game. There's so many wilds in play. Olay is really trying to figure out what cards he needs to draw, and then ends up landing on a wild. So My guess is that the orange, red, or green are fine but not important choices for him. William just says, great, I'll finish connecting the loop here. By the way, I do really respect that he played the more imperative route, the 6 yellow route, prior to playing the singleton route. While you can get completely blocked out, the other players are not terribly incentivized to do so. David doing something really interesting here and going down the East Coast. So my guess is that he's kind of got like one route that goes across the top and then one route that kind of goes along the side there, sort of a Tetris piece thing, I guess, like this. Is probably what his routes are looking like. I think he just kept 2, if I can see correctly. It's a little tough. It looks like most of the players kept 2, except for I think Tony kept all 4. If I'm reading that correctly. And I didn't notice this, but when William played a 6er, that actually put him in points above David. So let's see. David's played 3 6ers, a 5er, and a 3er. Williams played 3 6ers, a 5er, a 3er, and then a 2, 2, and 1. So he looks like he's holding a handful of cards. Like I can kind of see him fanned out a little bit, and maybe he's got like 6 or 7 cards. So David's going to have an additional 5 plus 3 turns of drawing, so like 10-ish extra cards. So David's probably holding on to like somewhere around 20, just a little bit less than 20 cards here. Really fascinating. So Ole grabs this San Francisco to Salt Lake City route. He really, really needs to make sure that he gets that LA San Fran path. So hopefully for him, William is not interested in going to San Francisco. I think it is fascinating that Ole grabbed that first. He must be pretty confident that Ole is not interested in going from LA to San Francisco. Oh, well, I guess Ole always has the option of connecting down through Las Vegas. And so it wouldn't be a total block if that LA thing happened. Yeah, okay. So that's not as big a deal as I thought it was. It looked very dangerous to me for a moment. And then we see here Tony is executing, what we said. He's going down the middle here to connect to Houston. It's going to be a long, boring slog. He's doing okay on points. I just think it's gonna be a handful of low points going. Once he's connected from there all the way down to Houston, he's still gonna have fewer points than Tony and William are. Here we go. Ole with the zigzag that we talked about. He's, I think, just moving to the part where every player is moving to the part where we're like, okay, we know we're sort of approaching the end game here. Let's make sure that we are finishing our plans before anyone runs out of trains. I don't know if David has, let's see, he's got 6, 12, 18, 22, 7, 30. Okay, so those 15 trains that we see on the table are correct. 14 trains for William, but we know that William has fewer cards in hand. I think that David legitimately might just be playing until, if I counted the cards roughly correctly, David might legitimately just be playing trains until the game is over. And I wonder if he's going to be able to connect that 6 route between Duluth and the mountain that shall not be named. Because it's not a lot. I mean, he can. There's just that 3 gray route there. So it's a little bit awkward, though. I don't know if he did it for the pathing or if he did it for the 6 points or if he did it not thinking that Tony was going to build a little house around him, which he did. Tony puttering away. I got my money on. I think Ole is going to play cards here. It could be that he draws. If he draws oranges, he's very clearly signaling that he's going to Las Vegas in that way. But he doesn't. So he's drawing randomly instead. The deck is just fat and full of all sorts of different wonderful colors right now, so we're not even going to try to assess that at all. I think he's about to draw the other one off the top of the deck here, so we're just going to have to wait for the shuffle. Can I skip ahead a little bit? Let's do this. There we go, and a shuffle and a cut. Just save ourselves 30 seconds or whatever there. Then we'll get probably one more draw off the top for our LA here. Yeah, great. So he didn't draw oranges, which to me says, yeah, he's probably looking to connect LA and San Francisco rather than down Salt Lake into Las Vegas, which I think makes sense. It's the better, it's the more efficient pathing, and also prevents some player just Hail Mary blocking him. I don't think that Ole's the player that I need to be concerned about at this table. He's in last place in points. He has kind of an awkward path. He's had to go ways that I don't think he wanted to go throughout the course of the game. So it's been a tough road for him. Tony, I think, is definitely going to connect. He's got, while I'm besmirching the fact that he has to go down the middle of the United States here, which just sucks and is again, slow and low scoring. There are a bunch of double pass, and they're all great. It's very, very, he's going to have the cards for it, right? Like, he doesn't have to worry about how the cards have played out for him. Grabbing a couple blues there. Pretty clear that David wants to connect that New York up to, is it Montreal? New York to somewhere in Canada. I guess actually he could be going down to Miami, and he's been waiting a while, I think, to grab those blues because William was kind of hoarding them for quite a long time. That Salt Lake Portland play, was not that long ago. Well, now David is grabbing oranges, so he's really throwing off my mental state here. Maybe he gave up on the yellow cards plan after drawing some randoms. He said, that's not what I need, so I need to make something work. I'm worried for him that he's going to run out of time, not connect his roots. David's got 13. So David and William both have 13 trains left. Granted, most of the big roots are gone, so they're going to be playing them slowly, but imagine, and I don't think it's going to happen, but imagine if David played a 5 blue route and then a 6 pink route, and then it's there's a turn left, the game's over now. He wouldn't connect his trains to each other, so I don't think that is the thing that he's going to do, but he might. The game can be deeply closer to ending than I think. Let's see if I can figure out Tony's train situation. Tony's got 6, 11, 15, 19, 23, 25, 27, 28. So, 6 more, 34. He's got 11 trains left. Okay, so Tony actually has the fewest trains. That being said, we know his next 2 plays are a 2 and a 1. So, still 8 trains left at that point. And then I guess if he has 6 pinks, which I think is not very likely given the cards that we've seen him draw, he could end the game in 3-ish rounds. I don't think that's going to happen, though. Could be, but it doesn't seem to me. Oh, he could have 6 reds to go to Miami, and then with the plan of connecting Houston to New Orleans after that. Oh, David is doing the thing. He's playing 6 pinks. Is what I said true? That would be wild. A shot in the dark called how he's going to end the game. I mean, ending the game is very, very bad for the other players here. Tony doesn't look happy about it. I think that Tony actually might end up connecting his thing. I wonder if his 4 tickets are actually gonna get him there. I don't know if he can connect all of them. We didn't see the extent of the tickets that he played. Oh man, David's just base score here is just so strong. I do appreciate how this game comes down to tickets in a very exciting way, and they can be so swingy. Look at Tony playing a wild and a red for a 2 route. He just has a bunch of single. Yeah, this is the other thing about going these long, slow paths, right? Is that he just has this puttering end game to finish pathing here. I think he sees that David might be ending the game next turn, and it's much nicer to draw if he had, for instance, a yellow, black, or white card in hand. He should draw one of those, right, to make 2. But he sees that there is an opportunity that David could play a 5er next turn, and it would be Tony's last turn. So he says, you know what? I'm willing to throw down the red and the wild to go the 2 spaces here. I'll guarantee that I'm going to connect my network down to this Houston-El Paso situation, and then just hope that the game's going to end soon, right? So Tony's in a really funny situation that he has said, I'm not going to get shut out by being unable to complete my path if David prioritizes going quickly. However, if David doesn't prioritize going quickly, if he ends up sort of trying to connect his network, or there's other paths that he needs to get to with his route, then Tony's just going to be like puttering in the last few rounds of this game, and that's awkward. Oh man, Ole had some ambitious ticket situations. What is going on? I don't think that's a block, because I think Ole's got to do a lot more. He was asking for players' card counts to see what happened, and we saw that David ended up drawing cards. So clearly looking for something specific. And I think he did grab a wild. Actually, was not paying attention. I was too busy looking at Ole's path here, because he's got 1, 2, 3 things that he needs to play to end up connecting. He's using a wild to do his second pink here. So I guess when he was drawing off the top, he was probably fishing for another pink. So he connects most of his route at this point, but I don't know what's going to happen if he's got sort of the yellows or the blues to connect his other paths. It could be that he actually just played that 5 train just for points. This is nice for William, that 5 red right there. That's another 10 points. Did I just move the wrong train? Hold on. Oh no. 2 points. Puts him to 60. Oh no. We just gave 10 points to the wrong player. I hope there's an audit. Oh, I hope they catch this. That is, well, maybe 10 points isn't going to matter at the end for William, but that is a big deal. I could see why Tony did it too. He just moved the red piece. It's so easy to muscle memory something like that. It's another 10 points for green. That triggers the end of the game. Wow, that was exactly what I'd mentioned. That's so interesting. Tony finishes the route. He throws down a single 1 wild. Cards worked out nicely for him, I guess. He just tosses it up to block there. Sure, why not? So David doesn't, David, I think he just says, I'm going to finish the game. I think I'm going to kill everyone else. Tony, I think, is the other competitor here. It kind of actually depends on what Williams' tickets look like, what his situation is, because he's low on who's got the longest train. Is it Tony? It's definitely not David. He didn't connect. He just made a bunch of points. Williams got a boat of cards in hand. Wow. Yes, you're very awkward. It feels like, how does he have so many cards left? Feels like he needed to be playing some trains earlier, just didn't think that Dave was going to go for it. I can't help but feel like he's going to miss a route. Oh, and now we've got Ole counting the length of his train. 6, 10, 15, 19, 21, 26, 28. And then we've got 11, 12, 13, 18, 21, 25, 31 for yellow. So Ole can connect and have the longest route, which is worth 10 points. He's probably debating that versus making a specific route. Yeah, because Ole's entire path is connected. He just has played fewer trains than the other players. I think Ole played a nice game. William and Tony, he got in his way, I think, for what he didn't get to execute his ideal game plan. And then, but he did find a way to move across the middle of the country in a way that scored decent points, right? Like 5 train, 4 train, 4 train, 2 train, 5 train, 2 train. But imagine if he did manage to do Phoenix, Denver, he would have had to do, I mean, the zigzag is not bad. He plays a 3 train, a 5 train, and a 4 train to go from Phoenix to Denver, his long zigzaggy way. But I think he's not connecting his whole network here. If he had managed to play Phoenix, Denver before William plays Phoenix, Denver, he might have been in a much nicer position. It's interesting what he's counting out. I mean, I feel like your points are pretty obvious at this point. Did Tony draw extra tickets at the beginning? I missed that. I think he might have. I think that might be why I might have missed a turn where he grabbed extra tickets, because I don't think you. I think you start with 3 ticket cards at the beginning. So Ole just drops 3 orange trains. That doesn't seem like it does anything. I don't know what the long thinking was about there, if that's all he was doing. A single train there must be a Vancouver Connect. Kind of a bummer for a last play. All right, let's see what we got, gentlemen. Oh, I guess also David gets to play something right now. That's the nice thing about ending the game too, is that you essentially get the extra actions. It is important to note that basically Tony and Ole got 1 fewer turn than William and David did in this game. That's one of the things about Ticket to Ride that you can tell it's a design from a while ago, is that players don't have an equal number of turns. And I don't think there's any advantage in this game for going 3rd or 4th. Like, it just is unfortunate. For Ole especially, I think that makes a big difference. Tony obviously, I think, did what he wanted to do this game. Yeah, but he also just has the fewest points. What is he counting? Are they counting scores? I just don't know what he'd be thinking about, right? Like, if it's his last turn. I don't think he's going to draw tickets. He doesn't have like a big network, so I'm just going to play some trains and end the game. But maybe they're doing an audit. They could be doing a point audit. That's my guess. So I'm pretty sure William's off by 10 points, but let's we can count it. 1, 2, 12, 42, 46, 56, 60, 75, which is, I think, the 10. Maybe it was even 11 points, honestly. I couldn't see where they picked him up from, or even 12 points. But yeah, this is why you do the audit at the end of the game. I think most people that I play with, they don't even score while we play. You just kind of score at the end. Interim score in this game doesn't tend to mean a ton. I wonder if they're going to notice that Ole's points are too many as well. Look at Ole's rainbow of a hand. He's drawing a lot of wilds at the end of the game there. Just obviously not the place you want to be. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, 5 greens there. Another 10 points, William. I see that. Yeah, he just missed out. Took too long. I really like that David just built huge trains and he was like, yep, I don't care about the network. It's fine. I'm just going to make points the basic way. And my guess is he's got some Miami, New York route, basically. And he just connected exactly that. Just ran a completely separate train line there. 630, 60, 70, 80, 6, 90, which is what he's at. So he's good. All right. So we've got, he wanted to see what he would draw. If they draw tickets, or did David choose to draw tickets? Was that speculative? What did they just do? Maybe William wanted to know. I think they're deconstructing the game, but it's so interesting that they're doing that before having played their tickets. I can't hear what they're saying because I always find it so distracting for them to be talking while I'm talking. So this is a part where I wish that I actually was listening to their audio. I don't really have a good sense. I will say also it could be tough because the commentators are also talking, and then the audio of the players is only so strong because I've just taken this straight from the World Series of Board Gaming channel. Let's just do a quick audit of Tony's points too. His makes sense because he hasn't traveled very far. I think that's what the players are doing right now. So he's got, let's see, 18 plus 444 is 21, 39, 41, 42, 44, 6, 7 plus 15, 62. Yeah, he's good. No, 63. We missed the point at the end. And it looks like they did notice that Ole has 10. Yeah, they know. Okay, they did catch it. Hooray for the audit. It's probably taking so long because they're trying to figure out why the gap was there. Like when that moment happened that their points are off. Let's count it again here. Let's see if we can skip ahead past the audit. So much double checking. All right, here we go. We've got a 13er and an 11er. They both look like they go up the West Coast. Here to here. And here to here. Great. So that's good. He makes both those. Not quite enough points, though. I mean, short of David completely botching his tickets, which, why would you rush the end of the game if that was the case? I don't think Williams really got it here. Yeah, there's no way David's making just 5 points in tickets. I don't know actually if they did the longest route thing yet, because William might have it. So that plus 10 actually does make a difference. So actually, if David makes one and doesn't make the other, just kind of like concede they didn't have to, but it's just so unlikely. There we see a 20er, and then is that a 10er? I think that is a Miami, New York. Or it's not even Miami. Maybe it's just like Atlanta, New York, something like that. Can't see what that number is. It looks like it's 20 and 8. So the 20 must be straight across the top there. 6, 6, 5, 3, 12, 7. Yeah, so it's exactly the northern route that he has. Montreal over to Vancouver. That was 20, and then another. Oh, it's just 6 for that other route. So he took some weenie route. Maybe it's Atlanta, New York, and he just played the 5er down to Miami. Yeah, that's got to be what it is. So he took one giant route, but he did do the L thing that I said. He didn't end up connecting it. He certainly could have. And it's so fascinating too, because he played 5 blues to end the game rather than 3 blues to connect the longest train there. It's just because he did all those 6-point things. Did Tony make everything? 10, 8, 7, 6, 18, 25, 33. So for all of his work, he got 33 points. I do think that he must have taken tickets and I missed it right at the beginning. So it cost an extra action. Meanwhile, David makes 26 points off of the 2 tickets. And then let's see how Ole may have gotten murdered here. Oh, maybe he didn't. Maybe he made it the whole way. 21 and 11. Yeah, looks like you're good. 32 points. So no one missed a ticket. They all connected. So interesting. This is a really high scoring game, I think. I think like 96 can win a game. 96, 99, 106, and 116. Yeah, those are pretty high scores. I mean, these are high tickets. 21, I think, might be the highest ticket in the deck. And then, yeah, Ole had some nice tickets. The 21 and 11 that are on a pretty similar path there. Really, really nice. Then he ended up just playing that 5 train. So I see. He played those 5 trains and those 3 trains to kind of end up blocking. Looks like the 10 extra points for longest rail, if he doesn't end up blocking players, ends up not being that significant. But yeah, David just got to do everything that he wanted to do. No one got in his way really throughout the course of the game. And so, yeah, he just was allowed to play. He played 4 6 trains and 2 5 trains. And just the fundamental core of those points there made him win. His tickets were actually, points-wise, the second least of the tickets. So, he's not going to win off of that. He just won off of raw score. And the fact that he's the player that ends the game is generally going to be beneficial as you throw the tempo off of the other players. William, if he'd been able to play his green, right, another 10 points for those 5 green trains, still doesn't quite get him there, but it would have been a lot closer. So I think he just missed on like what the tempo of the end game could have looked like. Really interesting to watch. I really appreciate the clip and the alacrity which the players of this game played. Wonderful. We're going to head into a longer game next, but thanks for doing this with me, everyone. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you soon.